Hi, I'm Kaya.
And I'm Joanna.
And this is Starlit Citadel Reviews.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is a loosely structured and challenging deduction game from Gary Grady, Raymond Edwards, Suzanne Goldberg, and Istari Games.
In Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, players are members of the Baker Street Irregulars, and they're trying to solve one of 10 mysteries more efficiently than Sherlock Holmes himself. It's playable by 1 to 8 people in about 1 to 2 hours.
Players begin Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective by choosing a case to solve. They place the map, London directory, and list of allies in the center of the table, along with all of the newspapers printed on or prior to the date of the case. The players read the opening summary of the case from the casebook and choose a lead investigator. Then the game begins.
On their turn, the lead investigator chooses a lead to follow. Now, this might be speaking to a suspect or witness, visiting the crime scene or a place of importance, or consulting with one of the experts on the list of allies. They find the location of their lead in the directory or on the map, and then look up the paragraph in the casebook that corresponds to its coordinates.
If there's no paragraph matching the chosen location, then the lead investigator chooses a new lead to follow. Now, the players can discuss amongst themselves which lead they want to follow, but in the end, it is the lead investigator's choice. Players must keep track of which leads have been followed.
The players can choose to keep written notes over the course of the investigation, and they can revisit leads they've previously followed whenever they'd like, along with the directory and newspapers. And the newspapers may contain items of information that are relevant to the case.
After a lead has been followed and the information it contains has been noted, then the lead investigator role passes on to the next player and the next round begins. The game can end at any point once the players believe that they've solved the case.
At the end of the game, the players flip to the question section at the back of the casebook and answer as many of the questions that are listed there as they're able. Then they flip to the solution section and they read out the narrative of how Sherlock himself solved the case.
Finally, the players score their own solution based on their ability to answer the questions and on the number of leads that they followed. They lose 5 points for every lead that they followed beyond the number that Sherlock followed, and they gain 5 points for every lead that they followed less than Sherlock's. Sherlock always has a score of 100 points, and the players should try to beat this score.
For a more competitive game, the players can choose to offer individual solutions to the mystery. So in this case, a player can choose to stop following leads at any time. They flip to the question section and then secretly answer the questions in writing. Once everybody's done this, they read out the solution, tally up their scores, and then the player with the most points wins.
So Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective was obviously made by a bunch of people who really love this world because the use of theme and the detail in everything is incredible. You've got the newspapers, you've got the flavor text, the London directory, the map of London. Everything is filled with the detail from the Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle world. So if you enjoy that world, those stories, or the new TV shows that have come out from the BBC or the American version, you're going to love jumping into this incredibly intricate, detailed world and playing in it. Another wonderful thing that comes along with that detail and that depth is it's incredibly open. You are deducing here. You're trying to figure out the solution to a mystery, and really you can go wherever you want, and you can look at whatever leads you'd like. In the flavor text for each case, obviously it gives you a couple hints as to maybe where you should start, but you don't have to start there. You can really go anywhere, talk to anyone, solve this case however you think best, and you might be surprised at how someone else solves the case, or how Sherlock solves the case. Now, a potential weakness that comes along with that really open structure is that this game probably bogs down a little bit, gets a little bit less efficient when you're playing with a larger group. So I would say if you're playing with more than 4 people, maybe, you might have a hard time getting a good score or really following up those leads and solving that case in a good length of time. You'll probably find that the game slows down quite a bit with a larger group.
Another potential drawback of that wonderful open structure is in its openness. As you may have noticed from our rules summary, there aren't really very many. And the thing about this game that can be very intimidating for new players is that it doesn't give you a ton of direction. There are a lot of tempting leads and clues in the first bit of text that you get, and there's definitely places that seem like they're more appealing or they're more likely to take you somewhere useful, but the game doesn't funnel you into a particular path. It's not the kind of deductive game where you're guessing from a set list of options, or you have to go to a particular place or follow a particular path to victory, which is great, but if you're new, it can be weird and scary and potentially lead to analysis paralysis or let one player who's feeling more confident kind of take over the flow of the game. It does get much better after the first few clues. It's really that first decision that feels the hardest. And once you've started following leads and they're starting to kind of build a picture for you, you'll be able to fill that in yourself quite easily. In terms of knowing where to go next, or at least making decisions as a group. But that opening hurdle can be a little bit of a leap for people. I was one person who was intimidated by that first step, but I absolutely loved this game. One of the things that I really enjoy is the fact that there's kind of a little victory and a big victory available in each case. Beating Sherlock's score is really, really hard. It's meant to be. Thematically, Sherlock is a genius who makes these intuitive leaps that most other people can't follow. And so it makes sense that when you flip to his solution, he's going to solve the case in a way that you didn't even conceive of, and in like half as many leads as your group did. So there's this really high bar that's set for victory, and for cooperative games like this one, that's something that really provides a lot of motivation and a lot of exciting challenge. That being said, you can still solve the case, and there is an enormous amount of satisfaction in doing that. The first case we solved, I was so excited by the fact that we'd done this and we'd answered the questions correctly that I didn't care that Sherlock had a much better score than I did. And so there's this lovely setup where you're aiming for this really, really high bar, but the achievement that you do make is still going to be very satisfying. The other thing that I actually kind of like about this game is that there is a finite number of cases. Obviously, for some people, that's going to be a negative, the fact that the game has a shelf life, and that shelf life is 10 cases, and after you've solved them, you're probably not going to want to play it again unless they come out with an expansion, which I understand is planned. But it is kind of neat having something that's got this very concrete episodic structure, and that does just end. There's a concrete sense of accomplishment to solving each case. There's a concrete sense of accomplishment to solving all of the cases in the box and of having beat the game. It's the same kind of dynamic that you often get with video games. That's much less common in board games, but is nice, and it really, I think, fits with the narrative nature of the Sherlock game. This is a game that's based on books. Each book was a case. Each case was solved, and it was done, and eventually you run out of cases. And it feels like the finality of the game actually really reinforces its theme and its tone, which is still hands down the best thing about it.
It was the one-armed man in the conservatory with the wood chipper, bam,